Hello, friends. It's Aunt Nikki of Your Story Hour. How are you guys doing? I'm looking forward to reading a new story with you guys. Uncle John started it, and now I'm getting to read chapter 2 in Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Mo, and Still Mo by Sam Campbell. I have to say, it's my first time even hearing this story. I grew up on a bunch of Sam Campbell stories, but not this one. How did I miss it? I don't know. But I didn't even have a copy of this book, so this book is my friends who are lending it to me. So I want to say thank you to Melanie, Tito, and Lydia. We appreciate it so we can hear the story together. Now let's see what's going on with those red squirrels in chapter 2 called And Still Mo. All through the night and into the next day, the northwest gale blew with undiminished fury. Our weather report was from observation, for there was not an hour passed but that someone was awake and up, seeing if Eeny, Meeny, Miny, and Mo were all right. We had brought them, basket and all, into the cabin and placed them before the fireplace. Duke fed them until they couldn't wiggle. Jenny tucked them snugly in their bed of cotton, and we put such a stack of wood on the fire that the only way another piece could have been added was to drop it through the chimney. Then we went to bed. However, it wasn't more than a half-hour later when I heard Duke come in from the tent house where he loved to sleep. He tiptoed to the fireplace, and I heard him chuckle softly as he moved the basket further away from the lively flames. "You might as well laugh out loud, Duke. We're wide awake," I called. Duke did. "I was afraid these little guys would be too warm," he explained, "so I sneaked in to see. Do you suppose I ought to feed them again while I'm up?" "Good heavens, no! You couldn't get any more milk in them unless you forced it in with a tire pump." "Okay," said Duke, a little disappointed, "but one of 'em is looking at me as if he wanted something. He probably wants to be let alone so he can get some sleep." "All right, guess I can take a hint." Mingling a laughter with baby talk, Duke tucked the squirrel tots away again and placed the basket where he thought it should be. Then, when he had gone to his tent, Ginny went in to see how well his tucking had been done, and she moved the basket still further away from the fire. A little later, when the flames had died down, I went out and moved it closer. Duke came in with some wood a few minutes after that and built up the fire. Next, Ginny went out and moved the basket away. Then I moved it up. Then Duke moved it back. It went up and back and up and back until those poor little things might have felt seasick. 3 times during the night the captain warmed some milk and fed them. Just as the gray clouds were showing the first faint light of dawn, he tried it a 4th time. Ginny and I had dropped off to sleep for a few minutes, and we were awakened by Duke's knock on our door. "What is it, Duke?" I asked. "The squirrels are gone!" he exclaimed. "The basket is empty!" Now there was excitement. We dressed and joined Duke in a search that was frantic, though not long. Apparently the basket by the fire was too warm a nest for our orphans, and they had sought out places more to their liking. 2 of them were curled up together back of our encyclopedias. One was huddling behind the mantel clock, and the 4th had made himself more difficult to find by hiding in the sofa. They were restored to their basket, now far from the fire, and seemed right glad to be together again. "We aren't going to keep these tykes confined anywhere for very long," observed Duke, as we sat at the breakfast table. "Can you imagine them getting around that way? Why, one of them is hardly as large as a peanut." A baby chicory matures rapidly. Not for long is he a helpless, dependent infant. In his world there is even every reason for growing up in a hurry. There are too many enemies that can find his nest and cause trouble. He must be able to move quickly and learn early the tricks that give him protection. But there were new events in the making. Jenny glanced out the front window and exclaimed excitedly, "Here comes Bill!" "And how?" Duke's rejoinder had more meaning than is usual in that cliché. "How that boat was cutting through the gray foam-streaked waters. It leaped, reared, and dipped like a bucking bronco. Sometimes it disappeared completely for an instant in a valley between two waves, only to come volumping over the crest for the next one, slapping it as if it in utter defiance. We could hear the motor snarling, and from the sound we knew that Bill had turned loose every ounce of power. It was an animated picture we looked on. Surely something had inspired even the boat itself to reach our island in the quickest possible time. We met Bill at our boathouse. He was breathless with excitement. "I got him," he said, "but he's a devil." "You got whom?" "The other red squirrel, the fifth one. You are welcome to him. He kept us awake all night." Number 5 was a problem. He had more pep and impishness than all the other 4 combined. Our neighbors had caught him about dusk the night before, when the little fellow had come back to his nest. They had held him and fed him, but he did not welcome their aid. He struggled and bit and scratched in their hands. Only sweetened warm milk calmed him down, and that was just for a moment. "He isn't bigger than a beetle," declared Bill, looking at us with sleepy eyes, "but he was all over the place and nothing flat. He went over and under the furniture, climbed the curtains, jumped up into the cupboard, plowed into a bowl of sugar, and tipped everything over. We put him in a cardboard box. He chewed his way out of it. We put him in a tin box. He made so much fuss we had to take him out. The only place he would sleep the night was in a bread box filled with a blanket." Number 5 had made his watery journey confined in a stationary box, but he banged against the lid until it looked as if there was internal earthquake. "He's all yours." Bill handed the box over with obvious relief. "Take him, and may God give you strength." Bill went home at high speed to take a nap, while Jenny, Duke, and I took the rollicking Number 5 to meet his brothers. "What do you call squirrels quintuplets?" I asked Duke. "Squints, I suppose." "Squints it is." Number 5 recognized his relatives, but he was surely a bad influence on them. He plowed right into them. Once he had been dumped into their basket. He bit one on the tail, a second on the ear, and scratched and mauled the others until he had them all in the same impish humor he was in. They fought, twisted, and tumbled until the basket bounced like an enlarged Mexican jumping bean. There you can see them. There's one of them. There's the nest. Oh, look at that tail. Number 5 looked self-sufficient and almost mean. His expression seemed to say to us, "I can take care of myself. Just let me alone." He hopped out of the basket only to be caught and carried back in Duke's large cupped hands. Far from being appreciated for this attention, he bit Duke's fingers. His baby teeth were not very effective, but sharp enough to make Duke glad to put him down. It was obvious that the basket would not be a suitable home for those lively youngsters for long. In fact, with the coming of Number 5, it was already inadequate. Out near Duke's tent house stood a large wire cage that had served as the home of many animals through the years. Rack and Roon the raccoons had used it for a few days, so had Salt and Pepper, our pet porcupines, and bear cubs, beavers, birds, and tiny deer, all under our protection until they grew out of the baby stage. Hastily we prepared this for the squints. We filled it with newly cut brush, covered the floor with moss and logs, placed a cloth-filled wooden box in one corner as a nest. Then we draped a heavy canvas over it to break the wind. By mid-morning, the new accommodations were ready for the squints. It was none too soon. They were simply boiling out of that basket. Ginny had spent half her time retrieving them from various nooks and corners. Number 5 had climbed up on a curtain rod and refused to come down. Only Duke could reach him, and he was bitten again for his trouble. There were a few minutes of calm while they were fed, after which they all went to sleep in a huddle in the basket. We seized on this opportunity to make final preparations for placing the little orphans in their new home. Water and various kinds of foods, peanuts, bread, and cornmeal were provided in outlandish proportions, for Duke had charge of this. We inspected the cage for any break in the wire. Then we assembled 5 colors of paint. This was not only to be a transplanting operation for the squirrels, but to be a christening. Each one must be identified and be marked in such a way that we would recognize him. Jenny brought the basket to the cage, and with great solemnity we began the ceremony. I uncovered the little rascals and reached for one of them, whereupon number 5 squealed defiantly and burrowed his way to the bottom of the heap. I lifted one and touched him between the front shoulders with a small brush dipped in green paint. I said, "I dub thee Eenie." With the aid of black paint, the next was christened Meenie, white paint distinguished Miney, and brown was for Mo. And the I dragged out my ceremony while trying to catch the rampant number 5. He squealed invectives entirely too severe for his age and crawled wildly among the rolls of cotton. When my hand caught up with him, he bit my finger. "Come out here, you little angel," I insisted. "You are going to be christened if I have to put you in irons, and red paint it shall be, for where you are there is danger." "But what are you going to call him?" asked Duke. "You have Eenie, Meenie, Miney, and Mo, but who is he?" I was ready for this. Raising the squirming scamp high, I touched him with red paint, saying in tremulous voice, "And I dub thee Stillmo." Duke went into a cackle spasm. And that's the end of chapter 2. Come back tomorrow and hear what Uncle John's going to read about in chapter 3. See you guys later.